Okay, looks like those numbers have steadied. So hi there everyone and welcome to our webinar today. It's for end of financial year tips for HR and payroll. My name is Brigid Daly and I'm a customer success manager here at Employment Hero, and I'm joined today by Rebecca Allen, Payroll Support Specialist at KeyPay.
Hi everyone.
So just a little bit of housekeeping before we begin. As this is a live Q&A session, we have allocated time toward the end of our webinar for your questions. Please don't hesitate to type your questions into the Q&A box down the bottom of your Zoom screens, and that bar is showing on screen now with a red arrow towards that Q&A. I'd also like to note that today's session is being recorded and will be made available as an on-demand webinar post the event. Just a quick disclaimer, the views here are our views and provided in good faith. We don't accept liability for any of our views, and we do recommend that you get expert advice if you feel you need it. So today's agenda, we're going to start with our payroll tips. So managing your employee data, understanding your ATO settings, finalising payroll, and then all you need to know about STP Phase 2. Then we'll move on to our HR tips. So knowing your obligations surrounding regulation and compliance, revisiting your workplace culture and goals, and general HR and workforce planning. And then we'll move through to the live Q&A to answer all of your questions. So I'm going to pass through to Rebecca now for her payroll tips.
Thanks, Bridget. Hi, everyone. I'll be taking you through some payroll tips to help reduce the stress of end of financial year. We'll be sending out resources at the end of the webinar as well to provide more detail on everything discussed today as well. So first slide. The first thing that you want to do is review your employee data, specifically employee and business settings. You can review your employee data by running an employee details report in KeyPay and downloading the employee data via personnel in the HR platform. Ensure that your employees' email addresses are correct, as you'll be sending notifications advising when their income statements are ready. You'll also want to confirm that you have the correct tax file number for each employee and that none are set to the generic 111, 111. Residential addresses can cause validation warnings in the finalisation event if they're incorrect, so these need to be reviewed as well. If working holiday makers are part of your workforce, it's essential that this setting is correct and that the home country as per the employee's visa is selected. This is because working holiday makers are taxed differently and an incorrect classification may affect their tax return. STP, so single touch payroll status. This is useful for businesses that have closely held employees reported on a quarterly basis and therefore will need to lodge a separate finalisation event. Now, the business settings are managed in different areas throughout the platform, and these are all outlined in the guides that we'll be sending you. It's important to ensure that your fringe benefit tax settings are correct, because this will determine whether the reportable fringe benefit amounts for each employee are declared as tax-free or taxable in their income statement. There are also a few settings that you'll need to check to ensure that the new super rate will be automatically updated on the 1st of July, and these are outlined in the guide. We also recommend that you review your pay categories and ensure that they have been correctly classified as per STP Phase 2 requirements, especially things like allowances and leave categories. If you have employees that have deductions, there are specific settings that will need to be configured within the deduction category, including salary sacrifice super, RESC, and child support payments. If you use our inbuilt system deduction and pay categories though, the correct classification is assigned automatically, but any custom categories will need to be reviewed. Next slide. Understanding your ATO settings. So you'll want to ensure that your ATO settings are correctly set up, depending on whether you're lodging as the employer. This is if there's no external tax agent who will be lodging submissions on your behalf, and if there's only one employing entity set up in the business. A tax or BAS agent. Now, the ATO has reported that all users who are lodging STP reports on behalf of clients are considered to be providing a payroll service. So you'll need to ensure that you are registered as an agent with the Tax Practitioner Board. Intermediary, this option is to be selected if the employer is lodging all ATO submissions for themselves, and there's more than one employing entity set up in the business. Now, some things to note is for the 21-22 financial year, STP exemptions are only applicable for WPN holders or businesses that have been granted a deferral or special exemption. And WPN holders must use a registered tax or BAS agent to report their STP, or they have to generate payment summaries. Before you can complete the electronic lodgement settings, you'll need to contact the ATO and provide them with your software provider and software ID information. Next slide. So ensure that all of your pay runs are finalised and lodged before commencing the EOFY finalisation process. You will need to have successfully lodged at least one pay event during the financial year, otherwise the finalisation event will fail to submit. Lodge an update event to ensure that the disaggregated earnings are reported correctly for STP Phase 2 if you've not done so already. Complete the reconciliation steps using the variance tab in the STP year-to-date Excel export. And then you're ready to go ahead and process the finalisation event using the EOFY wizard. A couple of things to keep in mind is that closely held payees reported on a quarterly basis will need to be finalised separately. And if any of your employees are classified as FEI, so foreign employment income, then the foreign tax must be reported against the employee in order to proceed with the finalisation event. And then lastly, ensure that you have lodged your finalisation declaration by the 14th of July. Next slide. Now, the biggest change brought about with the introduction of STP Phase 2 is additional reporting requirements of the employee and earnings data. The ATO's intent with capturing more information is to streamline employer and employee interactions with other government agencies and reduce the administrative tasks associated with hiring and terminating employees. In Phase 1, salary sacrifice amounts were not required to be reported. Rather, the employee's gross earnings were reduced by any salary sacrificed amounts, and it was the post-sacrificed amount that was reported. With STP Phase 2, the gross amount reported is the pre-sacrificed amount, so it's imperative that your deductions are set up correctly, for example, things like child support. Phase 2 reporting will also include a 6-character tax treatment code for each employee. So this is an abbreviated way of telling the ATO about factors that can influence the tax withheld. For example, you'll notice on your pay events and update events that they state SAW for salary and wages or CHP for closely held payee. Part of STP Phase 2 is that it's also now mandatory to obtain the visa country of existing working holiday makers. And you'll need to make sure that you review the locations assigned to foreign employment employees as well. Next slide. And some key dates and changes for FY 22-23, which is something that we're probably all looking forward to. The super guarantee percentage, as most of you will probably know, is increasing to 10.5% as of the 1st of July. And now that's effective for all pay runs with the pay date on or after the 1st of July. As mentioned previously, this will be automatically updated within the system. However, I will send out the guide, which will give you instructions on what settings need to be configured to make sure that that happens. The maximum quarterly contribution base is also increasing to 60,220. And from the 1st of July, you'll notice the removal of the 450 super eligibility threshold as well. Again, these will all be automatically updated within KeyPay. The ATO approved vehicle allowance rate is increasing to 75 cents per kilometre. And yesterday's big news, the Fair Work wage increase. All of the award pay rates within our award interpretations will be updated automatically, and you'll see the option to install the new update. Anything that is custom, so if you have custom pay categories or custom EBAs, you'll need to make sure that you review those accordingly. If you are using Beam as your super clearinghouse, you will need to ensure that your super batch is successfully uploaded and paid by 3:30 p.m. on the 23rd of June to be included in the 21-22 financial year for tax reasons. Thanks so much. I'll hand to Brigid to run through some HR tips.
Thanks, Beck. So HR tips for end of financial year. Look, first and foremost, it is important to note that end of financial year is largely handled within your payroll software and probably your payroll department of your business. However, there are several areas that we should consider in regards to HR surrounding our obligations for regulation and compliance. This is a great time to remind staff members to update their tax declaration in case anything may be changing for them in the next tax year, such as no longer having a student or help debt. Remember to review Fair Work regulations for any changes. One that I've seen come up quite a lot is family and domestic violence leave. This is a leave type that became a mandatory unpaid leave to be available to employees as part of the National Employment Standards. I've picked up over my time at Employment Hero many employers who haven't seen that and thus have disabled or deleted that leave type within their payroll and also leave policies. This is a great time of year to hit that reset button and ensure that your systems are most up to date with both the Australian Tax Office and the Fair Work requirements. This is also a good time to ensure that any payroll settings that you do go and change in your payroll platform, such as updating awards, are reflected within your HR platform. And any CPI or pay increases as well. So if you were to go and update your awards and your pay rates, you do actually need to reflectively update that in HR so that it will come through. End of financial year, similar to the beginning of a new year, is a great time to reflect and revisit your workplace culture and goals. And it's also a great time to review your HR information software system to see what areas you could be utilising. So these can be areas such as reviewing goals and perhaps setting performance reviews, CPI or pay increases that are non-mandated, reviewing your company values or perhaps setting some, assessing your culture, feedback and employee happiness, reflecting on HR and people management goals, and measuring company-wide alignment of those goals. This is also a great time to do some general HR and workforce planning. So perhaps it's preparing for upcoming performance reviews if that's something that you've already set. Perhaps it's analysing your employee engagement, your happiness and your turnover, reviewing current and existing employee disputes, reviewing your performance and management issues, assessing and evaluating your onboarding, retention and recruitment strategy, identifying and planning for new roles in the upcoming financial year, considering candidates for internal promotions, and letting your team know what they could claim on tax if they have been working from home. So look, I can actually see some Q&As coming in. So Beck and I will now start answering those. Now, just a note, guys, the way to lodge your questions in this forum will be via the Q&A. Beck and I, where possible, will answer these over the microphone, but we may also sit in the background as well and respond to those where we can as well. So with that, I'm just going to pull the first one up, Beck, and I'll read it out. So the first one that's come through, Beck, is, does that mean that you can no longer register STP for companies if you are not a BAS agent or employee?
No, so you can still register for STP if you are the business owner or an employee, say a payroll admin. You'll just need to ensure that you have set your ATO settings to lodge as the employer as opposed to as a tax or BAS agent.
Perfect. Got another one. So what is WPN, Beck?
So WPN is a withholding payer number as opposed to businesses who have an ABN. Now, this is offered to entities who are not eligible for ABNs, but will have PAYG withholding obligations.
Okay. And would you know if a WPN was applicable to you, Beck?
Yes, so you would have had to have applied for a WPN through the ATO as opposed to being registered for an ABN.
Okay, so people who don't know what it is, probably it's not applicable and don't need to.
Correct, yes.
So we've got one here, which is where in Employment Hero are the ATO settings. Now, just want to clarify, when we're talking about the ATO settings, we are talking about that in the payroll system. So if you have HR, it's not ATO settings, it will be in your payroll settings of your KeyPay or Employment Hero payroll platform.
Correct. So I just want to add to that, Brigid, as well. So as mentioned, some of the settings will need to be configured in the HR platform. So your employee details and things like that. And then your STP specific settings will be configured in the payroll platform. So in KeyPay, which is where you'll also then lodge your finalization event.
Perfect. Thanks, Beck. This is a great one. So how can we confirm if STP2 has been completed correctly?
Very good question. And the answer to this is quite a long answer. And the answer is it depends. So it depends on what business settings that you have and what you need to update. So the good news is that we have some really comprehensive guides which take you through what the requirements are for STP phase 2. So things like what payment classifications need to be set against your pay categories, your leave categories, and your deduction categories. And then also instructions on how to update your country code for working holiday makers. And then if you've got employees who are FEI, there's instructions as well. So we'll have all of those available in the email that gets sent out after the webinar.
Perfect. Thanks, Beck. Sorry, my computer just jumped on one of the questions because they're coming in thick and fast, which is fantastic.
Brigid, I have one for you.
Okay, cool.
So can employees update their tax declarations via the Employment Hero app, or does this need to be done by the HR admin?
Yeah, perfect. That's a fantastic question. So your employees can manage their tax file declarations themselves. I'm not sure if it's available via the phone app, but they can certainly do it on their desktop. And just for posterity, I'm quickly checking my phone app. Funnily enough, I'm one of those employees who got to update their tax deck the other day. So they can't do their tax file declaration in app, but if they use their login, they'll be able to do that on a desktop, and it will feed through to Employment Hero Payroll.
I'm just going to pick up a question that I've seen actually come through quite a bit from customers recently, because we sent out some comms about having to do an update event before finalizing your EOFY. Now, this is only relevant if you're lodging STP and you've lodged STP through EH and KeyPay with the transition from STP1 to STP2, which was introduced on the 1st of March in the KeyPay platform. You only need to do another update event now if you've not already done one. And the main reason why we've suggested to do the update event is because the ATO has asked for the system to be refreshed after you've updated all of your settings. So let's say, for example, your pay category classifications and things like that. You'll do an update event to make sure that the year-to-date data has been correctly changed to reflect the disaggregated earnings and things like that. So that's why we've suggested that that be done before you finalize, because what may happen when you go to do your reconciliation is you might see variances with things like salary sacrifice super deductions, because they'll be reported differently. So it's just really important. If you've not done one, if you've already done one, you can disregard that suggestion.
Perfect. Thanks, Beck. So we've got another one in here, which is, are only salary sacrifice contributions due by the 23rd of June? I thought MSCB contributions were due 1 month subsequent to this.
So it's anything that is classified as a super guarantee contribution is due. And the reason why we suggest the 23rd of June is if you're using Beam Super Clearinghouse, it could potentially take 3 to 5 days to clear and to reconcile that payment. So we just want to make sure that we give you enough time to have everything submitted by the 28th, which is the deadline.
Perfect. Thanks, Beck. do we have to do something different in our ATO for employees that are on a student visa?
In the ATO portal or in the platform?
It's a good question. The attendee hasn't specified whether or not it was in the portal or whether it would be employee. I mean, you do have to mark an employee as on a student visa in their tax deck.
Yeah.
So is there anything in the settings then that they would need to do or no?
The only thing that changed from STP1 to STP2 was the introduction of the country code. So now we just have to have that recorded. So that's the only difference. But they will still need to be listed as on a student visa, or if they're working holiday maker or something like that, they still need to have that setting selected in the tax file declaration. I have a question that is, will the super rate be automatically updated in Employment Hero? Is there any section in Employment Hero where the rate will be listed?
In Employment Hero HR? So in Employment Hero HR, if you're connected to Employment Hero Payroll or KeyPay, then superannuation contributions are controlled by your payroll settings in KeyPay or Employment Hero Payroll. So no update in the HR side. Okay, here's a great one. If we were using a different payroll system partway through the year, should I run an update event if we've not brought forward year-to-date figures?
So if we've not brought forward year-to-date figures and you are starting off your STP lodgement journey with us in STP phase 2, then no, you don't need to do an update event. So the main purpose for the update event was just to have the ATO's like back-end settings updated from STP1 to STP phase 2.
And so when would people have needed to do that? Because that happened, was that back in May?
March. So initially the recommendation, so we did send out comms, or there was, as part of the knowledge base articles, there was information sent out to state that should have been done realistically in March before the first STP2 lodgement was done. But if you've not done it, that's totally fine. It should still be done now though, before you finalise.
Perfect. Thanks, Beck. So I've got 2 questions that are kind of a similar vein, which is that you mentioned the superannuation guarantee. So the super payments for this financial year are due on the 28th of June. But we just got a query around, shouldn't it be July, because other superannuation payments and things like that for quarters are usually due in the month after a quarter has finished.
Oh, did I say June? Oh, I'm so sorry. Yes, July. Sorry, my apologies. So just to clarify, so the ATO due date is still correct as the 28th of July. The reason why we suggest to lodge, if you're wanting the super payment that you make in June now to be applicable for tax purposes, so if you're wanting to claim that on tax, your business tax, that needs to be done by the 28th of June for it to count. However, your standard lodgement, the due date is still the same. So 28th of July, my apologies.
Thanks, Beck. If you have lodged an update event, but not checked the settings on your pay categories, deductions, etc., are you able to lodge another update event again after reviewing these settings to ensure the disaggregated amounts are coming through correctly?
Correct. The update event, the main purpose of an update event for STP is purely just to update the ATO with year-to-date figures. So if you are having to make corrections to your payroll, if you're having to make corrections to, let's say, opening balances, anything like that, the update event is just an overarching refresh of all of your year-to-date data.
Perfect. Thanks, Beck.
No worries. Bridget, is there a pay increase or variation letter that can be sent out from EH?
Look, there absolutely is. In terms of whether or not the system has that template already inbuilt, I would just need to double check that. But if there isn't one or your company has one, then you can manage that in HR via your template settings, and you can actually add that letter in.
Excellent.
Sorry, I'm just like, I keep jumping around. How do we key in fringe benefit tax reportable amounts to be included in an employee's end of financial year payment summary amount?
So for payment summaries, if you're not lodging STP, the process is still quite similar. If you're not lodging STP and you're doing payment summaries, when you go to process the payment summary, there'll be a pop-up box that appears with an actions option to enter the RFB amounts. And then a similar step is included in the end of financial year wizard. So if you're lodging STP and you go to create a finalization event, one of the steps is to enter any RFB amounts. So you'll be prompted to do it. One question that I did see that I would like to pick up is, does it mean that closely held payees reported each pay cycle can be finalized as normal? And the answer is yes. So if you're reporting your closely held payees every pay run, they will be included in your normal finalization event. If you report your closely held payees on a quarterly basis, you'll see the option when you go to create the finalization event that there's a separate section to tick that says closely held payees.
Perfect. I've got one actually that's just come up, and I think it's fantastic for this forum. So it's, what support will be available for end of year? Will Employment Hero have extra support to assist clients through this? So the answer to that is yes, absolutely. This session is part of, I suppose, that program of offering help. We do also have an end of financial year landing page in our help centre, which has actually been assembled in consultation with Rebecca Allen and the KeyPay support team as well, making sure that we have various checklists, help articles, and videos as well, demonstrating how to do certain things for end of financial year. And KeyPay actually also has a resource centre set up as well. And I do believe that all these links are also going to be sent out as part of the resourcing from this session. This one's for you, Beck. So our next fortnightly payroll will be from the 20th of the 6th, 2022 to the 3rd of the 7th. In this case, what would the super rate be? Would it all be calculated at 10.5, or would it be 9 days at 10% and 1 day for 10.5%?
Let's have a look. I will just double check. So it was a period that was falling across.
Yeah. So I suppose, yeah. And would it be that if it was paid in, would it have to do with when it's paid?
Yeah, so it's
the
paid date that it's based off of. So all pay runs with a paid date on or after the 1st of July, it'll be updated at 10.5% for that time frame.
Excellent. Thanks, Beck. Another one for you. If you missed lodging an STP in the STP1, but you have run an update event when implementing STP2, do you need to lodge the STP, then run an update?
If you've already lodged an update event, no. So as a part of updating the settings for STP phase 2, the update event will also have reported any gross earnings and things like that. So all of that will have been included.
Okay, perfect. I think this was covered, but just double checking. So will the change in super rate to 10.5% be automatically updated within that payroll platform? And also, will the minimum 450 of super be removed?
Mm-hmm. Correct. So all of the changes will be made automatically. With the super rate specifically, there are a couple of things to keep in mind. So part of the business settings in KeyPay, there's a tick box that says automatically update my super rates. And that's a business specific setting that needs to be ticked. If that box is not ticked, then no, your business won't be included in when we do the update on the 1st of July. There's also a couple of employee specific settings. So if in the pay rate templates or in the employees' pay rates, the super rate has been overridden and that override tick box has been ticked, then they also won't be updated automatically. So it's just any of the, I guess you could say, the system specific settings will be updated automatically.
Okay, awesome. Thanks, Beck.
But I will just add a caveat, I'll add a caveat to that all of that information with the specific instructions of what to check will be also in the guides as well. So we'll make sure you have that.
Perfect. Actually, on the guides, we have a question of, are you sending a guide to make sure that we have each pay category shown correctly for STP phase 2?
That's correct, yes.
Awesome.
Yeah, so there's a couple of guides which run through in detail the disaggregation of gross, recommendations for what your payment classification should be. For example, if it's an allowance and it's a travel allowance, that you need to make sure you change that specifically to travel allowance. Things like leave categories will have the option to set other paid leave or personal leave or leave used upon termination and things like that. So the guides will take you through all of that information.
Perfect. We've got a few questions kind of around this tome, which is how to access the end of financial year wizard.
Mm-hmm. So this is done directly in the payroll platform, so in KeyPay, and it's through reports under Single Touch Payroll. You'll have the option to review any prior pay events that were lodged throughout the financial year, and then you'll also see the option to create an update event. And on the right hand side, there is a lovely little button that says Start Finalization Process, which will bring up the end of financial year wizard, and you can step through all of the things that you need to include.
So
I did see a question about the ATO settings, and somebody has asked if you've been lodging STP all year, if you need, like, why you need to contact the ATO. That would only be if you are new to STP and you'd not done that already. So if you were just setting up STP to finalize your business, you'll need to make sure that you've set up your ATO settings correctly. Otherwise, you can go ahead and just complete the finalization and lodge as you have been all year.
So we've got a question here which says, how do I check if the pay rates have been automatically updated? And they've gone further to say, we have an EBA, but our pay rates are in accordance with the award.
If you are using one of the inbuilt award interpretations, we will update the rates for you, and you'll see a prompt on the dashboard to install the award update. If you've created your own EBA and you've imported or created your own pay rate templates, then you will need to manage that yourself. Of course, support will be there for you if you need help with that, but there's the option to bulk export, update the rates, and then bulk re-import the rates as well. I can see a couple of questions that are about the Relationship Access Manager and ATO portal settings specifically. We do have a few bits of information in the guides about, like, if you're setting up STP for the first time and where to go to complete the process. But unfortunately, the questions that are specific around what level of access you need, those types of questions will need to be referred to the ATO.
Perfect. Do we have a video on how to start a pay, how to run a pay run finalisation event?
We definitely do. And that is something, if we've not already included in the guides, we can definitely do that.
Yeah, perfect. Beck, are we going to, or do we provide a reconciliation template or checklist?
Yes. Again, it's something that is a part of the documentation that we send out at the end of the webinar, and it's specifically like how to reconcile. So we have reintroduced the variance tab. So if you are running an update event now and you're wanting to do the reconciliation, you can download the year-to-date Excel export and compare the STP year-to-date worksheet with the payroll year-to-date worksheet, and then review that against things like your detailed activity report or your employee details in the HR platform.
Well, this is a good one, Beck, because I do, and this is about, I suppose, how the tax file deck from HR works into payroll. So basically what they've said is once the staff member updates their e-tax file deck, they're only updating the HR field. So would the admin then have to lodge that to the ATO? And if so, do all of those need to be done before or after finalisation? Now, correct me if I'm wrong, Beck, but part of STP2 is actually that tax file declarations are actually going to be relodged with every pay run. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. So it's not something that you necessarily have to go out of your way to do. It's done as a part of the STP process.
So long as those details have changed and updated, when you run your next pay run and you finalise it, all that information will be sent through to the ATO.
Correct, yes. Which is another reason why we recommend that you have reviewed your employee details and also that their tax file numbers are correct.
Awesome. Thanks, Beck. Oh, this is a great one, actually. What is an update event?
So an update event is, my answer is going to be a little silly. It's exactly what it sounds like. So when you're lodging STP, each of the STP events or lodgements or reports or whatever you would like to call them at the end of each pay run is considered a pay event. And they're usually related to a specific pay period or pay run. The update event sort of sits outside of that. And it's purely and simply just to update the ATO with year-to-date information. So you'll notice when you run a pay event that you'll see the year-to-date data, and then you can break down and review the pay run data, whereas the update event is just the year-to-date data. It's also, again, a fantastic tool if you're wanting to reconcile at the end of your financial year, because you can export the Excel workbook, which will give you all of the information that's been reported to the ATO versus all of the information that is in your payroll system, and you can compare and then reconcile that way. So it's great for both of those reasons.
Great, thanks, Beck. And with the update event as well, I suppose for people who've never done an update event in our system, and they're probably used to running their payroll every week and submitting to STP, but an update event doesn't occur through that pay run wizard, does it? It occurs through the reports, single touch payroll report.
Correct. It's a separate process. So it's not something that's done automatically. You actually have to manually choose to create the update event.
Excellent. Thanks, Beck.
No worries. Now I do see a question for a customer that says here, we use Xero as our payroll platform. I won't hold that against you. It says, shall we do the super update via Xero or through EH or KeyPay?
It's a great, well, you wouldn't do it through KeyPay because you're not using KeyPay by way of using Xero. If you have staff who are on a salary and they're in the HR platform, there is a super field, and when you are a Xero connected customer with a employee who is on a per annum or a salary, you will need to update their super rate in order for that to go through to Xero. But similar to the advice that Beck and I have been providing for our KeyPay or Employment Hero payroll customers, any changes that happen in your payroll software, you do need to go into the HR side of your software, go to payroll settings and update those payroll settings in order for those changes to come across, because HR is a one-way connection in general.
Excellent. I have a question here that says, hi, still setting up Employment Hero. Will I be able to lodge TFN declarations through Employment Hero? As MyOb does not have that function and we have to lodge via post.
Oh, look, yeah, absolutely. You'd still be able to do your tax file declarations via the HR software.
Fantastic. So I have another question that I'd like to answer, which is, what report do we use in payroll to reconcile the year to date with STP? So this is one that you can use. You can create an update event and export to Excel. But another would be the detailed activity report. So if you're using KeyPay specifically and you jump into reports and then run the DAR for the financial year, you can reconcile that against your STP event. So if you've got, let's say, for example, you want to have a look at your latest, the year-to-date figures on your last pay event, you can compare that with a detailed activity report and go from there. We have had a few questions recently from customers about the gross to net report and using that to reconcile, and we don't recommend that. The main reason why is the gross to net report will give you all of your earnings information, so including things that are exempt from payment summaries. So you want to make sure that you are actually reviewing only the STP specific data. Otherwise, you'll be making yourself a little crazy, seeing information that's not relevant.
Beck, we've got one in here, which is, so what's the difference between a closely held employee versus salary and wages?
Mm-hmm. So a closely held employee is an employee that is usually closely related to, like, say, the business owner. So it's a family member or someone like that. Now, to be a closely held payee, it needs to be registered through the ATO that this person is a closely held payee. So if you have them, you will know that you have them. And if you don't know what they are, then you probably don't have any closely held payees. And then salary and wages is what's considered an arm's length employee. So we have closely held, which is family, and then arm's length, which is your regular employees. And salary and wages just means they are a standard employee. They don't have any other classifications and they just get paid a regular wage. So they're not, they're not a foreign employee. They're not a working holiday maker. They're not under any other kind of classification, tax file classification.
Perfect. This is a good one about how I suppose our two systems work together. So once you've done a finalisation in payroll, do you have to sync HR from add-ons for payroll, or is it business as usual? So that's a great question, and thanks so much for asking. When you do a finalisation, you do not need to go and do any updates in HR. The finalisation process is a part of single touch payroll, which is completely handled via the payroll platform. I'm not sure if this is a payroll question or not, but I'm not recognising the acronym. So I'm just going to read it out and let me know if it is something you or I can answer. So it's, what level of access is required with RAM if I was doing payroll for multiple settings? I've not lodged a single payroll event with the ATO due to RAM access.
That's probably best asked of the ATO. I think that question would need to be asked to the ATO. From our perspective, from KeyPay settings, if you're lodging for multiple entities and you are not a registered tax or BAS agent, then it would be an intermediary for multiple employing entities. But of course, if you are a registered tax or BAS agent, then there's a separate setting for that. So it's definitely something to get some specialized advice on.
Perfect. And this is a good one and pertinent given yesterday. When can we expect to see updates in payroll in regards to the minimum wage increases?
So for any of the awards that are the changes applicable as of the 1st of July, you will see those on the 1st of July. And then for all of the awards where the change is applicable in October, we'll be updating it as of the date that's specified. So our customer experience team works really hard on the 30th of June, well, up until the 30th of June, to make sure that those award rate changes are ready to go as of the 1st of July.
Do we need to be registered as a WHM employer prior to hiring a WHM employee? If so, how can we register?
Correct, and that's done through the ATO as well.
How would the employee's gross wages be reported to the employees?
What was that, sorry?
How will the employee's gross wages be reported to the employees?
So your last pay run for the financial year, the employees can see their payroll year-to-date earnings in their payslip when that's sent out. And then once you have completed the finalization event, there's a prompt at the end of the wizard to send notifications to the employees to state that their income statements are ready. And then they'll be able to log into MyGov and then access their details that way.
Another one for you, Beck. It's, do we have to submit the pay event after making the last payment in the month of June?
Correct, yes. So we recommend completing the pay run as normal. So finalize the pay run, publish your pay slips and notify your employees, and also lodge the pay event as well, and then go ahead and complete the finalization steps.
And the finalization steps, Beck, need to be done by the 14th of July. Is that correct?
So the declaration needs to be submitted by the 14th of July, which is a part of the process. Brigid, can we do a bulk send out of a letter if we have different information, for example, if the salary changes?
Look, it's an excellent question. This is actually currently a feature request with our product team. So the answer, unfortunately, at the moment is no. That's not a feature currently available. However, it is something that we're aware would be a good to have. How can you set up PAYG to pay automatically from HeroPay or KeyPay? Currently, we do this via BPay.
There is an option in the payment file settings in KeyPay to have a separate bank account for PAYG. So when you finalize your pay run and you create your ABA file, you can actually have a separate section which will pay then to the ATO, so pay PAYG to the ATO. So if we've not already, we can send that out as a part of the email that gets sent out after the webinar as well. There's a couple of specific questions that we're being asked about STP2 classifications, and also a couple that I've seen about some validation warnings and errors when lodging STP. All of those are fantastic questions, and unfortunately we won't have the time to answer them individually, But if the information is not in the guides that we send out, then definitely let us know via the support team and we'd be happy to take a look at that for you.
Beck, let me know if this one is too specific. I'm not sure if this is broad or not, so I'll read it out and you can let me know. It says, if I needed to do a pay adjustment to year end, should that be done as a pay run?
I'm so sorry, Bridget, you just dropped out. What did you say?
Oh, classic. Sorry. It said, if I need to do a pay adjustment prior to year end, should that be done as an ad hoc pay run?
Yes. So more often than not, you'll notice if you ask this question to the support team that we recommend doing an ad hoc pay run as opposed to unlocking and editing your existing pay run. This is just so that you can have a record of the changes and then also lodge the changes separately. So yeah, any adjustments, we recommend ad hoc pay run, finalize that and lodge to STP, and then go ahead and do the finalization. Someone has asked if the wording payment summary is still applicable, and it is if you are lodging payment summaries specifically. So this is for customers who are not lodging via STP. So they would be people like WPN holders, or if you have a special exemption, it's something that you would have to apply to the ATO for a special exemption. And then in that case, you'll be providing your employees with payment summaries like we used to the old group certificate. But obviously now if you're lodging STP, then the income statement specifically will be available through MyGov once it's been done.
Now, look, I am just conscious of time. We've got about 5 more minutes left. So Beck and I will probably have time to answer about 1 or 2 more questions. I can see that we have several open questions left. And I just want to reassure everyone who is attending and whose question maybe we haven't gotten to yet, we're actually able to run a report at the end of this and answer those questions. And we will also have, I believe, a frequently asked question doc on the back of this as well, because some of these questions have come up quite a few times. So I just want to reassure everyone, if we haven't answered it, we absolutely, if your name's on it, then we can respond to you directly. If you've done it anonymously, then we will try and answer it in our FAQ. So just looking for...
I have another question here that states, if an award has an increase on the 1st of July, does this increase only apply on the first full pay run after the 1st of July? And that's correct, yes.
Awesome, thank you. Sorry.
I'm just going to grab one really quickly.
I'll go for it.
Can you please confirm where to update the tick for automatic super update? It's in KeyPay in the details settings for your business. So payroll settings, details.
Another one around payment summaries, Beck. So can you print payment summaries just to keep on record, even though you've lodged it through STP?
No, so if you have lodged STP, you won't have the feature available to generate payment summaries. And unfortunately, or fortunately, for whichever way you want to look at it, you don't have to deal with them at all. So the information will be directly available for the employees in their MyGov portal, as opposed to something that you could then print and send.
Excellent. We've probably got time for one last question, Beck.
Mm-hmm.
Are there any that are calling out to you?
Let's have a quick look. If there is a variance in the update event, report against the detailed activity report, how do we rectify this? We have a reconciliation guide which will cover the steps of what happens if there's a positive variance or a negative variance. But just really quickly, the general gist is that if there's a positive variance, it usually means that something has been incorrectly reported that doesn't need to be reported. For example, something in the STP reports has been duplicated or overstated. And if there's a negative variance, so the STP report is less than your year-to-date payroll, then it just means that something is usually missing that hasn't been reported. And the best fix for that would be an update event.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Beck. So look, guys, thank you so much to everyone for attending today. A survey will automatically launch after this. And look, we really actually would love your feedback about the session and how we can improve these in future or offer more. We will also send out some additional materials as discussed during the session, as well as the recording from today. And we'd love you to just have a wonderful afternoon. And thanks again for joining us.
Thank you so much, everyone. Have a great day.